Mr. Speaker, the Honorable John Ensign, United States Senator for the great state of Nevada, is at the bar of your assembly.
The appointed committee will escort Senator Ensign to the Chief Clerk's rostrum. Everyone please rise. Senator Ensign, we welcome you to the Assembly chambers and look forward to your message.
Well, thank you very much, Governor, Speaker, Majority Leader, members of the Senate and Assembly, other constitutional officer, distinguished guests, and my fellow citizens. Well, let me start by saying I guess this is the last time you'll have to put up with me speaking here, and if you're not off, I'll excuse you this time. I want to wish those who are playing in the basketball game tonight good luck. And I was noticing in the Speaker's office, I think he's been practicing ahead of time. I noticed a little Nerf basketball in there, and so I think he's been practicing. I'm not sure how well that's going to go over, but we'll see how the three-point shot works tonight. It is wonderful to be back here. I always enjoy these visits, and especially now when we are facing such incredible challenges here in our state. The challenges are not small. We all realize that. But neither is the dedication that you will each need to show in the coming months to get Nevada back on the right track into the future. Driving across Nevada today is somewhat reminiscent of our state's past, when population booms spurred by mining put this part of the country on the map. Towns were springing up in Nevada almost overnight, and people were coming from across the world to share in the profits from our state's earth. I recall this time in our state's history because the mining bubble burst. These once vibrant towns succumbed to a less desirable fate, and the ghost towns that still stand today are a reflection of that time in our state's history. When the mining bubble burst, Nevada changed direction by diversifying its economy, so that gambling became the reason that so many came to our lovely state. Nevada survived the mining bust and thrived. The toll that the economic recession of the last few years has taken on our state has brought ghost towns back to our state once again. In exchange for the rowdy ghost towns of the past, though, the ones that we drive by today are entire neighborhoods that are in foreclosure or for sale, plots of land that have been left undeveloped, and buildings that have been abandoned before completion. The cause of these ghost towns was the bursting of the housing bubble. Throughout the better part of the last couple of decades, our state experienced a population boom much like it did in the glory days of the mining industry. Nevada's vibrant economy brought people and businesses from all over the country to our state. Low property values meant that people were buying up homes faster than they could be built, and property prices were inflated rapidly as a result. Unfortunately, when the housing market went bust, so did our economy. A state plagued by ghost towns does not have to be our future. We can change our state's path into the future, just as Nevadans, generations before us, did with when their economic prospects dried up. So how do we do this? Well, we need to diversify our economy. I think we can all agree upon that. As members of the Nevada Legislature, you are required by law to balance your budget. Unfortunately, the United States government is not required to do the same, despite efforts by myself and many others who have tried to change this in Washington. I don't think this makes sense to anybody around the country, nor should it make sense to any of us. Families are required to balance their budgets. Businesses are required to. States are required to do the same, and yet the United States government is under no such requirement to ensure that the money it spends is not outweighing the money that it takes in. Today, our country is truly living on borrowed money. Our spending levels have rapidly increased, and our need to borrow money to float our dollar has increased as well. China owes more of our debt than any other single entity. I'm certain that those of you who are here today have seen the news stories, at least one or two, about the budget battles that we're dealing with back in Washington. The core fight on this issue is not whether we should make important spending cuts to the federal government's budget. The question is how much. President Obama has reiterated his pledge to get the United States on a path toward fiscal responsibility. But without his leadership on entitlement reform, negotiations in the House and the Senate have unfortunately left only Republicans at the table. In fact, many of my Democrat colleagues have been grumbling that he has not been leading on this issue of spending cuts. The nation's struggle economy is not just a one-party problem. It's an American problem that requires a bipartisan solution. So how do I think that we need to get our economy back on track? Well, I actually think the answer is not simple. But we need to start by reducing government spending to allow the private sector to grow and to create jobs. I believe that more government spending is not the answer to our economic woes. Investment in the private sector is. To paraphrase a great president, Ronald Reagan, he said that the best way to eternal life in Washington, D.C. is to become a government agency. And I'm sure you experience this here in the state. Every time we create a new agency or department, it creates a constituency that lobbies for its continued existence. Well, cutting government spending while increasing tax burden on the American people, I do not believe is how we jumpstart this economy. Increasing taxes on small businesses, these are our nation's job creators, means that employers will be faced with a choice, either to hire some of our nation's unemployed or to pay more money to the government. We cannot afford to get this thing wrong. We cannot balance our budgets, state or federal, by raising taxes and stifling job creation. For the United States, this would mean that companies will outsource more of their jobs overseas, and our struggling economy will further sour. For our state of Nevada, balancing the budget with tax increases will mean that our friends and our neighbors will remain unemployed. More businesses will go out of business, and companies looking to move to a business-friendly climate may not come to our state of Nevada. I know that you have your work cut out for you, but I believe that you have a great leader in Governor Sandoval to lead the way. He is willing to make the tough choices, and he's willing to stand beside you as you make those tough choices in getting Nevada back on track. Unfortunately, though, if we do not improve education in our state and in our country, the spending cuts that we make at all levels will matter little if we have an undereducated workforce. But we have to be honest in this state about our K-12 system. It is not measuring up. All you have to do is talk to our universities, our community colleges, talk to them about folks who receive the Millennium Scholarship. And they tell you that even the people who receive those scholarships, many of them still have to take remedial courses. Now, I'm going to talk about education not as a United States Senator, but as a Nevadan and as a parent, because I don't want to see the changes that need to happen in education being mandated from Washington. Education is a state and a local issue. It needs to remain a state and a local issue and have the federal government get out of the way. Now, instead of the mandates that the Department of Education hands down, I believe the Department of Education should be more like a think tank, sharing the good ideas that are working in certain parts of the country so that you can implement those good ideas at the local and the state level. Sharing ideas is really what we should be doing in Washington, not mandating on what we think is best from Washington. Now, we all know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, that we're dead last when it comes to graduation rates. How do we begin to bring companies to our state when there just isn't an adequate job pool for them to hire from? We can't. As a member of the Senate Commerce Committee, I speak with technology companies all over the country. Just today, you all know we have a company called Intuit that's located in Reno. I met with those folks today, and I asked them the same question I ask everybody. What would it take to bring more of your business, either expanding or to bring new businesses to the state of Nevada when it comes to technology businesses? I'm constantly hearing the same response. People are afraid to come here because of our K through 12 system. They're afraid to bring their employees here, that their kids won't have good enough schools to go through here in the state of Nevada. That's what I hear from them. Well, I also believe, though, we shouldn't paint all educators with the same broad brush. We know that there are great examples of passionate, skilled educators across our state. However, the small percentage of bad administrators and bad teachers is bringing our whole K through 12 system down here in this state. See, I believe in paying educators who improve student performance more. I also believe that if educators are doing a lousy job, they need to find something else to do than ruin our kids' education. It's time to end this idea of teacher tenure or principal tenure. It's time to end that idea here in the state of Nevada. Recently, Bill Gates penned an op-ed for the Washington Post on how teacher development could revolutionize our schools. I want to quote from him. He said that we know that of all the variables under a school's control, the single most decisive factor in student achievement is excellent teaching. It is astonishing what great teachers can do for their students. He went on to say, the United States spends $50 billion a year on automatic salary increases based on teacher seniority. It's reasonable to assume that teachers who have served longer are more effective, but the evidence says that's just not true. After the first few years, seniority seems to have no effect on student achievement, end quote. Well, Governor, I know that you're fighting to end teacher tenure in our state. I believe it's the right thing to do because Nevada's education system is an important focus, I know, for you and for all of you in this room. I also believe you're correct in ending this idea of social promotion. The idea that somebody can't read by the 3rd grade and we're going to pass them on to the 4th grade is outrageous. And I will tell you a personal story on this. I joined the Big Brother, Big Sister program many years ago. My little brother, Donzel, I met him in 3rd grade. He could not read a Cat in the Hat book. And guess what they did? They passed him on to the 4th grade and the 5th grade and on and on and on it went. Well, those kids, we can't afford to do that to them. They're too precious. These children are our future, and we need to care enough about them to make sure that they get that basic education that every child in the United States should have a right to. I previously mentioned the need to diversify our state's economy to get back on track. Less dependence on tourism means that when a nation economy takes a dip, Nevada could hold its own. But if our children cannot compete with those in other states, let alone those in other countries, our state will continue to be dependent on tourism. The reality is, though, that dumping more money into a bad system is not going to help. In fact, it may even make a bad system even worse. Education in America, unfortunately, has become less about the students than it is about the adults. I know, Mr. Speaker, we both watched together the documentary called Waiting for Superman. If you haven't watched it and you care about education, I implore you to watch it. It talks about the problems in education and the solutions in education. And if we're going to change, and by the way, if you happen to be of the left-leaning persuasion of the political spectrum, this documentary was made by progressives, not by conservatives. The answers are there to education. We just have to have the political will to enact those reforms that we need. We all know that teachers in Nevada get tenure after 1 year. We all know that. It's not called teacher tenure in our state. It's called a contract, but it's basically the same thing. And unfortunately, we have had too many people for too long fighting to preserve the career of a teacher instead of preserving the education of a student. I believe we've been going down the wrong path. And failure to reverse course means that we might as well seal our fate as a dwindling world power today. We are competing in a global economy, and education is a key to our children's future economically as well as socially. I believe that teachers need to be incentivized to teach and to teach children well. The days when teachers were paid the same regardless of performance should be in the past. I believe that merit pay should be part of our future, but this merit pay shouldn't be determined from Washington, D.C. It should be determined mostly at the local level. A child's education should also not be based on family income level. We know that bad schools actually lead to bad neighborhoods, not the other way around. And if you can fix the schools, you can fix the neighborhoods. I don't believe that we should write off these children just because they happen to live in a bad neighborhood. The last time I spoke here, I mentioned about an amazing school in Las Vegas called West Prep. Dr. Mike Barton at the helm has taken this school in our education system by storm. So much so that I recently spoke at his first graduation class. He had 42 children graduate. This school was the worst school in Nevada when it was a junior high. He turned it into a K through 12 system. Of the 42 children, 100% of whom qualified for the school lunch program, the free school lunch program, 100% of whom are minorities. Of the 42 seniors, 42 out of 42 are going to college. That's something to be applauded. The school valedictorian was from the Philippines. 4 years ago, she couldn't even speak English. When she spoke about the faculty, she broke down crying because of the amazing journey that she had had at this school. Well, let me tell you about one of the other fine students at West Prep, Lazaro Cesar. He's a shining example of the promise that's hidden away in our state schools. I first met him at that graduation. He was the 8th grade speaker speaking to the seniors who were graduating. Young man walks up to me, sticks out his hand, was incredibly impressive, not only on a one-on-one basis, but he amazed everybody in the room. So I started thinking about him. What is this future going to hold for this young man? Well, he came to Washington as part of a school visit to Washington and inquired with my office about doing an internship. Now, this young man is only 13 years of age, and we don't do internships for 13-year-olds. Well, after thinking about him for about a week or two, I called my state director, Sonia, and I said, Sonia, call Lazaro, offer him an internship. Now, this young man had to sometimes take 2 buses to get to our office, showed up on time in a suit every day that he couldn't afford, and made sure that he was there learning and was one of the best interns that we've ever had. Good story to tell about Lazaro, by the way. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but Lazaro was just accepted to the elite Phillips Executive Academy in New Hampshire. Those are the kind of kids that we cannot afford to give up on their education. They are here in Nevada, and we need to make sure they have the best possible education that we can so that we don't lose those kids to dropout and to some other life of crime. Well, the United States in our K-12 system has been falling behind as well. We're here concerned in our own state, but we have to be also concerned about our whole country, because it truly is the future, whether or not we're going to compete in the world economy if we have a good K-12 system. Well, yesterday, I spoke, many of you have heard of a man named Andre Agassi. Andre Agassi has Agassi Prep down in southern Nevada. We spent quite a bit of time on the phone because I talked to Andre about his ideas of education. He's so passionate. He has about 650 kids going to a school, but he said to me, he said, Senator, he goes, that's not my goal, is to educate 650 kids. I care about this state. I want to take and take what we're doing here to scale, but I'm finding it very difficult. Well, one of the things that he said to me, because you hear today a lot about charter schools, and he said, a bad charter school is just as bad as a bad public school. Charter schools are not necessarily the answer to our education woes. They can be part of the answer, but they aren't a silver bullet. But I do want to tell you that Nevada has one of the worst charter school laws in the country, and only you can change that. See, there are great charter school operators around the country. They're best-in-class operators. And this isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's not a union or a non-union issue. One of the best charter school operators is called Green Dot. They're a union charter school. But we have a law on the books that says to the best charter school operators, we don't want to come to your state. And that's why they don't come to Nevada. So we need to change our charter school laws, work with those who know the details of this, and work to change our charter school laws so we can attract the best charter school operators in this state. And it's not going to change our whole education system, but what it will do is it will show us some of the more answers to hopefully help us change the rest of the public school system to make it work for all of the children all across the state of Nevada. Let me turn toward what I'm trying to do back in Washington, D.C. to help our state as far as its economy. We know, and I mentioned before, our mining industry. We know that our mining industry is incredible. It produces a huge amount of jobs, really, really high-paying jobs. It could do much, much more. I'm actually working on something right now that would help streamline the regulations for the mining industry. You see, right now, when you talk to the mining industry, they'll tell you it takes 8 to 10 years to open a new mine in the state of Nevada. 8 to 10 years. If we were able to streamline those regulations, we don't have to get rid of any of them. If we could streamline them down to a couple years, we literally could produce thousands and thousands of high-paying jobs right here in the state of Nevada in the next couple of years. Thousands and thousands, average salaries between $80,000 and $100,000. That could help be a real economic boom to our state. And by the way, these mining companies, they contribute to the schools, the local economies, and last time I checked, they contribute to the state budget as well. So if we can have more mining jobs, that's less people on unemployment, and that's more revenues coming into the state government, which just maybe would help your budget problems as well. The last thing I want to mention on the economy has to do with energy. We're seeing what's happened with gasoline prices. That's not good for a state that's so dependent on tourism. We're approaching $4 a gallon, and I'm afraid that $4 a gallon actually could go to $5 a gallon. That could be decimating have a decimating effect on our economy here in the state of Nevada. We have tremendous renewable energy resources in our state. We know that. The problem today is getting the permits, once again, for even renewable energy is very difficult. So we need to streamline the permitting process for renewable energy so Nevada can create more jobs. But for the rest of the country, I don't know how you feel watching things going on in Libya and around the world, but we spend a lot of money with our military ensuring that oil flows freely from the Middle East. I would rather be dependent on American energy than I would on energy coming from places in the world that aren't necessarily stable and don't necessarily like us. In Alaska alone, there are 3 areas in Alaska, including Anwar, which is the Arctic Wildlife Refuge area up there. Those 3 areas alone have enough oil to supply the United States with the same amount of oil that we get from the Persian Gulf for the next 65 years. And yet the current administration is blocking us from going up there. We have natural gas reserves that we've discovered that are massive in this country. We have coal deposits. We're the Saudi Arabia of coal. All of these types of things, as we transition to more renewable energy, I would rather be dependent on American fossil fuels than I would be on fossil fuels coming from dangerous parts of the world that aren't necessarily friendly to us. For Nevada's economy and for the economy of the United States, we need to have more American supplies of energy so that we can become less dependent on this dangerous foreign oil that we have. Well, in conclusion, The next 21 months that I have left in office, I'm committing to you that I'm going to work as hard as I've ever worked to ensuring that our state gets better, that our country gets better. I believe in reducing government spending, in balancing and working toward balancing the federal budget, improving education in America. These are my top priorities over the next 21 months. I know that we're facing very difficult times here in the state of Nevada. But with difficult times comes great opportunity. And that's what you and I have right now, is a great opportunity. We do not have to let the history books be written about this time that you and I failed as leaders. Together, I truly believe, as the governor said in his State of the State speech, that the best days for Nevada truly can be ahead of us. And I say can be because they only will be if we make the right choices. If we work together, regardless of party affiliation, for the betterment of our state. I'm willing to join you in whatever way I can to partner with you from that big city back in Washington, D.C., and whatever we can do there. But I will be praying for you and hoping that you can solve our state's budget problems and helping to turn this state around both educationally and economically so that Nevada's best days truly are ahead of us. God bless all of you. God bless the great state of Nevada. Thank you.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the Senate and the Assembly in joint session extend a vote of thanks to Senator Ensign for his timely, able, and constructive message.
Assemblyman Handbrick.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Heard the motion. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. The appointed committee will escort Senator Ensign to the bar of the Assembly.